If you follow my channel, you know I like to make these workout videos every now and then. So I made another workout for you. The idea is that you can print out the PDFs if you're a Patreon and you can play along. Or you can try to play along anyway. I also try to do things that come up in my teaching as a guitar teacher. And I was looking for a tune that you could practice modes, the modes of the major scale. And I was kind of tired of the usual suspects. Maiden Voyage, Impressions. There's nothing wrong with those tunes, but I wanted something new. It got me thinking about Flamenco Sketches from Kind of Blue. Miles Davis' Kind of Blue, right? But I didn't want to play it as a ballad. I wanted something with more of a groove to it. So I looked on the interweb and I found this version with, I think her name is Roxana Ahmed, where they play it as a kind of a 6/8 groove. So this gives us the opportunity to work on scales, modes, and patterns. We're gonna play some patterns over this. It's gonna be a technique exercise. Another tune you could work on is Little Sunflower, which I have made a similar video of in the past, but here we're gonna use triplets. So we're gonna work on scalar patterns in triplets over the chords of Flamenco Sketches. So the tune consists of 5 different modes. First is the C Ionian. So here I'm playing a C major 7 to a G sus. Or F over G to create an Ionian situation. Then it goes to A flat Mixolydian. So I think Bill Evans is kind of alternating between a sus 13 to a regular 13, kind of. But that works anyway. B flat major 7, also Ionian. Same thing here, is kind of alternating between the B flat major 7 and some kind of F sus. Then we go into D Phrygian. Like a sus flat 9 chord. This is twice as long, this section. Then we have a G minor Dorian. So we're gonna play it as a 6/8 feel, or you can think of it, I think of it as 4/4, but with like a triplet subdivision. So I go into my iReal Pro. Funny enough, this tune is not in the playlist, but it's not hard to make one. Remember, you have to make it twice as long as the actual version because we're playing a ballad as double time, kind of. So anyway, this is what it looks like. And then I picked the field called Jazz Afro 12/8. And this is 110 beats per minute. Let's first off just play the scales. C Ionian. A flat mixo. As triplets and so on. So here we go. C Ionian. A flats. F major. Here comes D sus, or frigid, D frigid. Remember, it's twice as long. G Dorian. Let's do the whole thing again. I messed up a couple of times, so I'll do it again without talking. Here we go. Those were the scales. Could you play other scales? Yes, I wouldn't play Lydian. To me it seems kind of clear that they're going for an Ionian sounder. However, the Phrygian could be like Phrygian dominant. I think that's actually what they're playing on the recording, more or less. So G harmonic minor. But for the sake of simplicity of this video, we're gonna keep it like a Phrygian. You could actually change between the two if you wanted to. There is an interesting recording with, I think it's Nils-Petter Molvaer, the ECM artist, where they play the first chord as a harmonic major. So I'll see if I can link to that recording so you can check it out. It sounds really good. And if you don't know what harmonic major is, you can check out my video on harmonic major. So then, some of you are thinking, well, shouldn't I practice all the positions and I'm just picking one position per scale? I'm kind of assuming that if you're watching this, you know all the positions of all the scales and all this stuff. And what we're working on here is technique. Yes, you should know all the positions, but here we're gonna work on technique, so I'm just picking one position for each scale, more or less. Should I be picking alternate picking, economy picking, sweep picking, gypsy jazz picking, hybrid picking? Should it be finger picking? Doesn't really matter. I think you should do whatever you do, or legato, whatever you do best. The important thing is that your technique shouldn't interfere with the music, so the scale should be even. And if your technique, like a legato technique, makes certain notes different, then something is wrong with your technique. So use whatever technique you want or that you usually do. Make sure that your notes are even. And when in doubt, use alternate picking. That should be the default. Yeah, so all these gonna be on my Patreon page. It's turned out to be like 12 pages or something. So now we're looking for scale patterns, scalar patterns. I divide these scalar patterns into 3 different categories. Well, intervals, triads, and 4-part chords. And we're gonna play them ascending and alternating, and then with an added chromatic leading note. This is gonna make sense. When it comes to patterns, scalar patterns, there is an endless possibility. It's impossible to do every imaginable scalar pattern. So that's why I'm kind of compressing it into what I think is most relevant. If you're looking for material, you don't know what to play, you can get this book, the Serious Jazz Practice book, the first one. This is just page after page of these scalar patterns. But it's a little bit overwhelming, so that's why I'm gonna compress it to the most important that I think are the most important. You could also go to Ted Green's website and look at patterns there. There are a whole bunch of patterns there as well. So first I said intervals, so thirds from each scale degree. So a third from the first scale degree, from the next. We've all done this, right? Remember, we're going to do them as triplets, which is going to give us kind of like a polyrhythmic feel. And then I'm going to turn it around. Like that. So I was struggling a little bit there with the Phrygian. So that's why you want to go back and find out what was the problem and then try to fix it. That's how you should be practicing. You want to make sure that all the notes are even, so regardless of what technique you're using, legato or what have you. I mentioned the Ted Green website where he has a bunch of patterns. What he's done there, I think, he removed the first note and make it like a rest. I think the idea there is that you want to avoid the habit of always starting your phrases on beat 1. So the way you practice, if you practice this stuff a lot, chances are that it's gonna influence how you play. So just getting into the habit of not playing the first note could change a lot and make it sound more interesting. So I'll show you what that sounds like. that was ascending, the notes going up. Then I guess you could do the opposite, right? Descending. But as Miles Okazaki points out in his excellent book, Fundamentals of Guitar, that's kind of redundant. Because if you omit the first note, what you're actually doing is fourths. If you think about it like that, which we're going to do later on, so it's redundant to do it. It's the same thing. And when you're practicing, you want to make sure you practice effectively. So doing something and then doing the same thing again, it's not very effective. It's kind of not good at all. We're not going to do that because, again, we're going to play fourths. But what we're going to do, though, is alternate up and down. So one up, one down. Which gives us a kind of a 4-note pattern as triplets, which gives us even more of a polyrhythmic feel. And here it's important to think about how you're accenting the notes. If you're gonna accent them, if I accent every third note, like the quarter note pulse, a shuffle, like. But what if I emphasize every fourth note? All of a sudden it sounds like I'm playing a new time signature, a new pulse, but it's the same, I'm doing the same thing, I'm just accenting differently. That's something to be aware of, something to keep in mind. You want to be able to do both and switch back and forth. So anyway, this is what it sounds like. Stop there. I'm not going to play every example over the whole thing from now on because the video would be absurdly long. The idea is that you can practice, once you have all these patterns down, you can go ahead and practice them yourself over the whole thing. But I have them written out for you with tabs and all that stuff. Something that comes up is fingering issues when you do this stuff with the guitar students. And I like to have the approach that I don't want to tell you which fingerings you should use because it's so different depending on what kind of player you are. So take players like Frank Gambale and I don't know, Papathini. They would probably play these things completely different, or John Scofield. They would probably all play these patterns completely different depending on how they play. So you need to figure out what works for you. So it's not that I'm a lazy teacher, that I'm not telling you, but I find in my experience that I can show you what I do, I can show a student what I do, but it doesn't really work for that person. But some of my philosophy, I don't like to bar with the fourth finger if I play. Between the F and the A there. So I would find a different way of doing that. use different fingers and kind of move out of the position real quick to do that. But I know people who do the rolls with the fourth finger, no problem, even like several strings, but I don't like to do that. I think the index finger is the only finger that is really good at doing the rolls. But some things you really don't want to do is you don't want to jump with the same finger to another string and another fret. But I probably do that every now and then too, but I try not to do that. This is not really a video about this. I'm just giving you some patterns that you can work on. We're working on technique. So that includes you figuring out how you want to, what kind of fingerings you want to use. So there's one more patterns for the intervals, and it's adding a leading note between or below the lowest note of the third. And here I'm probably breaking the fingering rules I just mentioned all over the place. I try to do slides as much as possible with these. So let's check that out. I'm just gonna do it over the first chord. Some of you are asking, shouldn't you be doing it over the whole fretboard like that? Yes, ultimately you want to be able to do that, but we're not working on that here. We're kind of, again, working on technique, because these patterns, these sequences, you need to be able to play them really fast. They sound good when you play them fast, like a sax player, where it's just like, you know, and that's kind of what I'm aiming for. So I'm trying to find if there's fingerings that I work and trying to figure out how I can play these patterns with good technique. So there were 3 different patterns for intervals. Going up, going one up and one down, and with a leading note from below. Again, of course you can come up with so many more patterns, but this is already a lot of work. We're gonna look at the other intervals we have available, so fourths. Here again, I'm breaking my own rules. Sometimes I go out of position because it makes more sense to play kind of this way, horizontally. I find it kind of weird to play fourths like that on the guitar. I remember a workshop with a famous jazz guitarist who plays a lot of fourths, and one of the questions that came up was like, how do you finger fourths when you're playing, because it's not really natural on the guitar, and his response was like, what are you talking about? It's the easiest thing on the guitar to play fourths. It's literally like that, which was kind of a good response, but you don't necessarily want to do that. I find also that I do a lot of hybrid picking when I play fourths. And then the A flat 13. going to sound really good when we play them as triplets. Again, depending on how I accent. Or it's going to sound totally different. So if I alternate between those two, accenting every other note or accenting every third note, you can create this kind of feeling of going in and out of different time signatures. It's like that tune. So again, I'm kind of skipping a lot here because the video can't go on forever, but these patterns are written out in notation and tab and in PDF on my Patreon page. So then again, you can go one up and one down. This is really interesting. Do that with all the intervals, and you do the things we did also with chromatic leading notes. So you see, we already have quite a lot, so you don't have to have like hundreds and hundreds of sequences or patterns. It's enough, I think, with these I'm going to show in this video. When the patterns get really complex, because you can create really complex patterns, that's another thing. That's something in and of itself. That's more of an intellectual kind of exercise, I think, like a mental exercise. This is to build shops. Because I find with guitar players, students, when you introduce them to improvisation, if they're improvising around a scale, they kind of just play stepwise. Because they've never practiced this kind of stuff. Right? And it's funny because sax players and horn players don't seem to have this problem, but it's easy to move around on the guitar, but for some reason maybe it's not. So what you want to do is you want to practice, try to improvise. So maybe try going in and out of those sequences. Play something else. To improvise focusing on one interval or something. So if we move on to the fifth and do the the same thing. It's a great sound. That's 1/5 up and 1 down. I'm just gonna play it over the C. Now you're getting the wider intervals into your lines. And this kind of playing usually it's better to think horizontally, like Pat Metheny. But you should also be able to do it in a position like this. Sixths, also amazing sound. When we're playing 6 on the guitar, it sounds like guitar, which is a great sound, but maybe not always what you want. Maybe you want more of a sax kind of doobly boobly boobly, that kind of sound. And now all of a sudden it involves string skipping, so I'll try this one. Struggling there, it was a fingering I wanted to use. There it is. You can even do sevenths. I need to move on here, so next I said triads. So basically just playing triads diatonically going up. It's gonna sound pretty straightforward since we're playing triplets and these are 3-note groupings. Of course you could play reversed on the way down. When I play triads like this, I definitely tend to think more horizontally. I find it a lot easier to think this way rather than this, but again, we're working on technique here, so I'm trying to play them in position as well. And it sounds really good with one going up and one going down. that, one up and one down. Remember that you could omit the first note. It would sound like this if I just drop the first note. Again, that's something you might want to do just to get into the habit of not playing everything from the first beat. Also remember that you could do the Phrygian as a Phrygian dominant scale if you want even more options. Then how do you make this more difficult? How do you take it to the next level? You can use the iReal Pro and you can go to the little funny hat there in the corner and increase the tempo every time, and then or you could practice going through every key. There's not a shortage of stuff to work on if you really want to practice. The triads, you can also use the chromatic leading note from, I like this one, from the top note of the triad and going down. This is something you hear. John Coltrane played this a lot, and you hear a lot of people play this. Also, now we're getting 4-note patterns. So it's going to sound really cool. Try that again. These I would definitely prefer to play horizontally, these kind of patterns. Like this, for example, I don't know. Like that. Okay, so next is 4-part chords or arpeggios. Like a C major 7 like that. D minor. Also 4-note patterns, right? So it's gonna sound pretty cool as well. to play one up and one down, because now we're getting kind of an 8-note pattern, which is really gonna sound interesting as triplets. Let's check it out. This one also, it sounds better if it's, imagine like a sax player, they play the like it's supposed to be played really fast to work. Otherwise, it just sounds like you're in the practice room. But if you can go, if you can play it really fast, then it sounds more like cascading notes or something. Something I noticed, this is gonna be like one of those hacks. There's something that I noticed about this that I've never thought about before. But if I play them, now I'm going kind of outside of the topic, but if I play them like this, with the same kind of fingering, 1 note, 2 notes, and 1 note. So 1 note on this string, 2 notes on this string, and 1 note on this, and then go to the next. If I play these 2 notes, and then I think of the next 2 notes as my starting point, I only use these 2 fingers. Right? I think of those notes together. Do you know what I mean? I just shift the focus. I hope you understand what I mean here. So I'm playing the same thing, it's just I'm shifting where I'm starting mentally, and then it's easier because I'm in the same position, because I can play or down faster than I can play then you can kind of get around the speed limit by doing that, if it makes sense. I hope that makes some sense. Finally, you could add a chromatic note here too. Of course, it's not a chromatic note if it's a note that it's already in the scale, but then you get a 5-note pattern, which is kind of even more strange. It's not really that strange. Bill Evans played that all the time. So it might be better to play them as quintuplets. This is what I'm talking about. I need to be able to play them fast for it to work, right? Or you can play them as like 2 two notes and a triplet. Two notes and a triplet. Da ba da ba da ba ba da ba da. I digress. So again, all these PDFs are going to be on my Patreon page, and a huge thank you to my patrons who enable me to keep producing these videos. And I have also started doing a Zoom kind of hangout for my patrons the first Sunday of each month. I'll try to do that. It was really nice last time we did it. So if you want to explore this idea further, I have another workout video which is very similar, but with not with triplets, over Little Sunflower. So I'll link to that in the description below. And I also have this video where I talk about playing horizontally versus vertically that I made a few years back that you might want to check out as well. So as always, I want to thank you for your time and attention, and I shall see you next time.